So I'm going to take you through the synergy of these systems, how they work together. So the core, what is the core and what is it not? So it's not just about your six pack, the muscles and all your abdominal muscles at the front. So we're going to think about it as a cylinder system. So the diaphragm's at the top, the pelvic floor is at the bottom, and we're at the front, the abdominal muscle we're thinking about as the deeper transabdominal muscle that then connects through to our back muscles, particularly the multifidus and the glutes. So that system works together and it changes the abdominal pressure that helps support our trunk. So when you have a strong six-pack, you don't necessarily have a good core or stability through the front. That's different. So the core function. So it works to provide stability to our trunk, keeping us upright. It provides a strong base for our upper and lower limbs to work off of. And then it's always adjusting the intra-abdominal pressure, helping our balance as well. So we want this system not to be like the picture. We don't want it to be stiff. We want it to be flexible. If it is too stiff, it can cause a dysfunction of either the pelvic floor or even our breathing, and it can relate to back pain as well. We want to have trust in our body that it has reflexes, it works automatically in response to movement and load. I also want to highlight that we have another kind of cylinder system that connects from the diaphragm up to our glottis or our throat. Yep, and this also works changing pressure and helps us with strength. So if you think of a tennis player hitting a ball and grunting, they're using that stiffness to help with their power. So how does the system work? So if you think of the diaphragm like a dome at the top, when we breathe in, it flattens, and our pelvic floor is moving in the same way as the diaphragm, like a piston, so that will lower also. When we're lying on the floor, it's very obvious that our belly then rises as the diaphragm kind of takes up space. This is less obvious when we're upright. When we breathe out, that's just the diaphragm's just recoiling back up, and the pelvic floor will just slightly come back up with it as well. So that system is working together, as we said, and the abdominal muscle is controlling the pressure in that cylinder system. So now we're just going to demonstrate how you would prompt for diaphragmatic breathing, also called belly breathing, with a client. So Alice, I would like you to just put a hand on your upper chest and one on your upper tummy. What we're looking for is a nice still upper chest and for the belly to rise gently towards the ceiling. So if you think about the diaphragm as an upside down dome, as we breathe in it's flattening, just happens to push the belly up. Really good. Really nice. Yeah, so if I put a weight on your tummy, that gives you a little bit of feedback for those that have trouble doing it. You can relax your arms down. Yep, and you're just raising that gently up. And then it just recoils back down again. Brilliant. And the upper chest is nice and still. Just gently. So we don't need big volumes here. Cool. And so how does the breathing relate to the pelvic floor? So I'm going to demonstrate with my balloon. So if we imagine the balloon is kind of like your abdominal chamber. So you've got your diaphragm above and your pelvic floor below. We talked about this as being a cylinder in relation to your core system. Yeah. So as you breathe in, yeah, that's putting pressure on that balloon, and there's a little bit of downward pressure on the pelvic floor, or the tummy comes out. Yep. As you breathe out, which is a passive reaction, it comes back up and the pelvic floor will raise too. So it's like a piston kind of movement. The diaphragm's working with the pelvic floor. They're both lowering and then just recoiling back up. And you can imagine by tightening through the abdominal muscles, that's going to impact both of those systems, the pelvic floor and the diaphragm, and also through the back as well. If we're ever holding our abdominals on firm, that's going to either impact our breathing or the pelvic floor. It can have a downwards impact on the pelvic floor, and it's an area that there's not much research, so we actually don't know how that whole system works and how the loads are and how it affects the pelvic floor. What we do know is that if you are poor breathing, for example, breath holding, yeah, that can impact the pelvic floor. So you can be more symptomatic with incontinence or leakage because it's putting a load down. Alternatively, if you're holding your abdominals in or activating the core all the time too, that can either affect your breathing, but also put a bit more load on the pelvic floor. So that whole system interconnects. So just to emphasize, core exercise performed alone do not increase pelvic floor muscle strength. We need specific muscles to target the pelvic floor.